Share desktop. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So as we discussed originally, Meltano, the homepage now has been simplified just to a simple getting started button. More importantly, the information architecture on the upper right has been simplified as well. Everything now lives under the single documentation um, section. And so as part of the merge request within the README as well here on Meltano, this will also be simplified. Getting started would also disappear. And basically it would say, check out our documentation. And instead of the meltano.com link, it will link directly to this documentation section. And so as you can see here, we have a basic introduction as to what Meltano is, the basic requirements, and then, installation steps. And then after that, people are welcome to follow like a basic tutorial for initializing a new project, and then sort of, how you might use it. And then, we have some fundamental concepts as far as like, overview of like what Meltano does and those sort of things for more descriptive things, but everything now lives within the documentation section.
Is the only reason the README isn't updated is because the MR is not merged?
Correct.
Okay, great.
Yep.
So the README is updated, but just not merged the MR.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
But I just wanted to highlight that it will shoot directly to the documentation section of the site.
Can you show the homepage again?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah. So all the stuff that lived there at one point now lives in here, basically, to explain like, what Meltano is as a project versus as a framework, ELT, analyze, and those sort of things. Yep, but I think that's it. That was the main reorg for that.
That looks a lot simpler. Sid, what do you think?
Yeah, nice. Why isn't it merged yet?
I didn't merge it yet. I'm going to merge it right now.
Yeah, and as we grow like the installation steps, like for example, I know that we want to create a path for non-Docker. So basically you can see like the tutorial will break out into like a Docker path versus a non-Docker path.
We should only have a non-Docker path.
Only a non-Docker path. Okay, I'll make sure to make a note of that.
So Docker is now used to install Postgres, but we should make sure the simplest use case just uses SQLite.
Okay.
And then in further things, you need Postgres, but we'll just say, hey, put your Postgres credentials here. And we'll just assume the user does that out of bounds.
Okay.
We're not gonna make a Snowflake container either.
Got it.
The data warehouse business.
So that's merged. The only thing is your other merge request 260 now has conflicts.
That's fine. I'll fix that.
But I found a really cool way to say it. The D in Meltano stands for data warehouse, and the W stands for warehouse.
The D in Meltano?
The D and W in Meltano stands for data warehouse. There are no D and W in Meltano, so we're not going there.
That's good. It's like that old joke, why do you spell rose with a B? There's no B in rose. Well, there wasn't that one. It's a old joke. Anyway, cool. Yeah, thanks a lot, Ben. That looks really great. I merged that, so that's really good. I think for all intents and purposes, we should have a working demo today, because I know that Giannis is almost done with the DBT move, right? And then Derek and I are going to work together to get the graphs working today. We're quite close. And
this
then
is your way of saying we don't have a demo.
Well, I'm waiting for Giannis. Said that he was really. Do you think you'll have it in the next minute, Giannis, or do you think it's going to take a lot longer?
I can live demo and let's see what happens. Okay, let me give me 1 minute so that I'm done and I can. Let's see if it works.
Derek and I do not have a demo.
Unfortunately.
Just give me slow. I'm really sorry. So let me share my screen. So I was testing. Let me go scroll up so that I can tell you what I was doing. So now we can Meltano, when we Meltano init project, demo project, this runs very fast because we don't install DBT. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, can you run it again or?
Yeah, wait, because now I'm installing DBT down here. Let me see that after this finishes, I will do it. Or let me do it in another tab,
Oh, okay.
in another terminal. So yeah, let me see where I am. I don't know. So let me start VN. Okay, so if I run Meltano init and my cool project, now it should run very, very fast. Of course, my CPU is also used to install DBT in the other terminal.
And Zoom.
Yeah, so it does nothing now because that's why I wanted to. Yeah,
Oh,
so you can see that it installed everything very, very fast. So this is the first thing, the first update we have. And then if I do cd my cool project, now if I run Meltano, discover all, you will see that we also have, let's wait for it. It's the CPU. It's used to store something different. So you can see that transformers are now first-class citizens, similar to extractors and loaders. So you can install DBT as a separate package. So you can now run Meltano add extractor tab fastly, and then Meltano add a loader, target Postgres, and also choose to add a transformer, which at the moment it's DBT. And as we discussed, we will automate that and no need and have those as defaults. But at the moment, at the current version, you have to manually add each one. And let me go back to the other tab. Yeah, it's still installing, but it's so after this, after adding DBT, we now have added DBT as a package to Meltano. And now we can run, when this finishes, we will be able to run a full extraction and run DBT, and everything will be there.
So we want to get rid of this, right? We don't no longer want to say Meltano add.
Yeah.
We should just give a command. And DBT, I think itself, we should install it when you have a DBT, but we should run a certain DBT model. So it shouldn't, we shouldn't have, and when you run Discover, it shouldn't say DBT, it should say DBT Stripe, DBT Snowflake, DBT this, DBT that.
At the moment, because it's similar to, so you can see that it was installed, it's similar to the extractors and the loaders. So the DBT is the software that runs behind it. It's like when we run a tab, it's the tab that runs. But yeah, in the next step, we can show only the transformations, not the DBT as it is. But behind the scenes, DBT is added as a package to our project.
Sure.
Yeah.
But nobody cares.
Yeah, of course.
So
of course.
People should care only about DBT Redshift and things like that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. But so what we have to do in the next step is, for example, at the moment, I'm going to run something similar to that. As a next step, we will remove this ID here. Will be auto-generated. We won't need the minus extractor and the minus loader. And also we will check if tap carbon intensity is installed, and we will install it by ourselves. We will check if target Postgres is installed, and also we will check if DBT is installed. And we will do all the steps above at once the moment a user asks to Meltano ELT tap carbon intensity to target process. So if I run this, but behind the scenes, that's what happens. So if I run this, you can see that it runs perfectly fine. I could also manually add the transformation and see if DBT runs correctly. But at least at the moment, we have brought the project to work as it was working before, but with DBT the installation of DBT being delayed. And also, yeah.
So it's going to install tap carbon intensity and target Postgres when you run this if they're not installed.
That's it. That's what we want to do for the next week. So
okay, great. And then what I'm thinking is that it should by default skip transformations.
Okay.
And then you don't, if you don't run a transformation, you don't run a transformation. And then the transforms are downloaded, are the same, they sit in the package. We download those as well. They get named. And then if it needs to run a transform, it installs DBT. I think
yeah, but at the moment, yeah, we don't have something like that. So we don't have predefined transformations or anything. So I think
right now they run locally, right?
Yeah, and there is no repository with those transformations anywhere.
There is. You can just go to getdbt.com, and at the bottom there are 3 links.
Yeah, I agree, but there
are 3 repos.
Yeah,
and the only thing you need to do is put those in the file, in the Discover file.
Yeah, that's what we can do. So we can support Stripe, and I don't remember the 2 others. And
Redshift,
we can also.
Snowplow.
We should probably then create. We probably then need to create a DBT package for Carbon data so that we can, if we want to demo it with DBT, because none of those taps are going to work with DBT, but none of those transforms are going to work with the Carbon data.
Exactly. So we will have to add that also, or by default when we install. So we have to see how we are going to add some transformations for our default tabs.
Can we remove the default transformations that are in there? Because there's this GitLab runners transformation that's in there by default.
So yeah, you can see there that there is no more the error we had. We also fixed the error. So if you see that we tried to run DBT and it found no transformations for carbon intensity, so it said there is nothing for me to do because there is no transformation for tap carbon intensity.
Great, that's much better.
So it was ignored, and we are not having any errors there. So next thing will be to also somehow find a way to add some transformations for tap carbon intensity, and we will have an end-to-end test, the demonstration.
What file contains the contents when you type discovery? What file is that in the repo? What's the name of that file?
Discover.yaml.
Yeah. So if I go here, if you go to my project here, my cool project, my demo project, you will see that here we have those are the ones that I have installed, and the Discover is outside. It's here, and it's in where is it? I cannot see it at the moment, but
I can't find it either. It's not in the root directory.
It's under source because.
What are you looking for?
The Discover YAML. I think that it's under source core.
No. Discover.yaml, I think gets generated when you create the file. Oh, there it is.
Yeah, so
there it is.
It's here, and the Discover is here, and then we generate. So this is the default thing that we have for. So those are all the.
So can you add the DBT thing right now, so that we stop talking about this? Yeah.
You're talking about adding.
Yeah, I pasted Stripe one in the Zoom chat.
Oh, okay.
Let's fix that one.
You would need to remove DBT as DBT is a transformer. That's the program. We want to remove that from there. All our transforms are going to be done by DBT by default.
We can have it as a default. Let's. This is not a problem. If we want to add transformations,
just change the thing. To change the name on line 87 to dbt-stripe, and change the pip URL to a URL and put in what I just put in the Zoom chat. We've been talking about this for a couple of times now, so I want to make sure that we understand each other. And I want to go from talking about things to making the change.
Yeah,
you don't have to commit it to master yet.
Yeah, but
you understand what we're going to.
I understand that 100%, but we don't support that at the moment. What we support at the moment is bringing.
But I want to make sure you understand, because we've been talking about this for 4 times now. So please make the change.
Yeah, we will do it, but it's not a 30-minute update. Because at the moment.
I understand. So I'm not requiring you to commit this to master. Just make a branch with the change so we can reference that.
Yeah, we will do that. So the step at the moment was to be able to at least be able to run DBT and rerun it and install it on the fly. Next step will be to be able to bring those models and those transformations. I agree.
Cool.
I'm going to make an issue for that, and we'll put it in the next milestone, which is next week. And I'll send it to you, Yannis.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can do that.
So maybe for Derek and Ben, we had a 2.5-hour conversation or something with Jacob and Yannis. So I'll try to give a short summary. We've talked for many weeks now about using SQLite, and there was pushback against that again. The thing is, we just want SQLite to work for the initial demo, the carbon intensity. It doesn't have to work for each and every use case. So it doesn't have to do JSON storage for schemaless fields or things like that. We don't care. It just has to work for the carbon one. We talked about the Meltano model, and I encourage you to open the agenda, point 34. By the way, Ben, your video is off. So the Meltano model, Jacob wrote up how that works. And we're going to try to make sure that the output of the modeling lands in superset that will do the graph generation. We're calling that the analyze step. Although you could make the argument many ways, but we're just making it this way. The model step has the data model, and it kind of outputs SQL and some graph data. Number 33 is kind of saying that, let's reserve the model for kind of the SQL queries generated with DMA file. 32, we were, for example, working on speeding up things in Meltano with binary transforms, which is super cool and something we definitely need to do. However, not right now, because right now we got 0 users using Meltano. So we don't have a business right now. So we have to first start getting a business. And I reminisce the story of the beginning of GitLab, of how extreme you have to be about prioritizing your users above making the product better. In the beginning of GitLab was based on something called Gitolite. Gitolite was a 100,000 line Perl script that looked in a certain repo, and it kind of administered which repositories you had access to. So GitLab kind of looked pretty similar to today. You could kind of add users and things like that. Now what GitLab would do on the back end is go to that Git repo and commit the user and change the user rights accordingly. Like a very kludgy thing. And there were companies using it with 30,000 plus people. They had to kind of install SSDs in their servers, because that repo had to be updated like every other second. in order to fulfill all the things that the users did. I hope, I'm not sure it comes across, but this is like the most kludgy, horrible design you could possibly think of, where you commit every role-based access control in a repo with 30,000 users. And it's not that Dimitri didn't know that this was a shitty design. It was that he didn't have any time to fix it because we needed to do some stuff to make users happy. And I think that's what's really, that urgency is what I'm missing right now, and what we're going to instill in this team in the year. We're going to go way faster, and we're going to get stuff done in order to get users. Because if we keep stuck at 0 users, that means we have 0 time, and we got to start having users. GitLab was used by over 50,000 organizations before, even with this GitLite stuff on the back end. So performance, stuff like that, that's all nice. Make sure it does something that people want and people understand it. Make sure demos work and documentation works. That's way more important. And then the speed up, we first have to earn the right to afford to be able to have time to work on that. 31 is kind of a draft that I want to have clearer responsibilities so that things are done and that there's no ambiguity over who does what. So I could imagine that we decide that Ben works on the docs, Derek works on the model front end, Jacob on the model back end. And what the modeling is, that is under 34. I'll type Meltano in front. Janus keep working on the CLI. Mikkel starts working on integrating Jupyter. And we basically don't have an interface for anything except the CLI and maybe model, although model seems to work with files, so I'm not sure it needs an interface either. But we start using web interfaces as much as we can. For example, we don't want to be in the business of making 100 different graphs. That takes 300 people, and we're just not. We don't have the luxury of affording time for that. So we're going to try to use Superset for that. And likewise with all the other things here. And we're not going to make any additions to, we're not going to improve Singer for now. Even though we know it's not perfect, we're going to focus on making this a very great user experience and making like example cases of how people can use it. And those use cases can be under 30, Carbon, a Salesforce Insight Squared kind of thing, a Snowplow, Google Analytics example, etc. So the old way of working was depth over breadth, like improving the speed. The new thing is breadth over depth, making sure the whole thing works end to end. And we actually have stuff to demo when we have a meeting to demo things. The old way was diffuse accountability. The new way is clear accountability with people. The old way was not invented here. Oh, I looked at saying, I'll make something else. The new thing is boring solutions, as long as we can possibly do it. The old way was slow progress. The new way is quick progress. The old way was documentation last. Like I made this, but I haven't updated the documentation yet. The new thing is documentation first. The old thing was long-term goals. This is where we're going to be in 3 months. The new thing will be short-term goals. This is where we're going to be next week. The old way was work on what you think is important. Although, well, that might, I'm removing that because that's not true. The old way was company first. The new way is user first. So we're going to become much more user focused and user driven. We cannot imagine what we want. We're going to be listening to people. Now, we kind of did that by listening to the data team, but they no longer are, seem to be a customer. So we're going to focus on finding new users. The old way was focusing on more advanced features. The new way is focusing on the getting started experience. Having to boot up Postgres in the Docker container, huge hurdle. We're going to make sure we fix things like that. The old way is focusing on what can we do. I'll fix it. I'll make it. The new thing is focusing on how can we get others to start contributing. Got an idea for a binary interface? Great. Write it up. let someone else make it.
By the way, we got another contributor.
Awesome. Yeah, so that was a short summary of what we discussed. I'm sure there's comments and questions from Derek or Ben.
Generally, I just want to say, yeah, thanks for sharing that. It's helpful.
Ben, anything you want to say?
No, I think everything you said makes sense. I appreciate you sharing the Gitolite story. Yeah, definitely a good reminder that it's important to focus on users and not necessarily the ideal solution.
Yep. It's, thanks for that. And it's not even the ideal solution. It's like what you think are the basic necessities of something you can actually use. Like this makes total sense. And look, we're all working on stuff that makes a lot of sense, but we have to prioritize finding users. And those are like, we have to find a lot of them.
Yeah.
And there's a whole lot of work to do. One great thing is the longer I'm in this industry, like I'm not the dumbest guy on earth. I learned Ruby on Rails myself. I learned programming myself. I wasn't a good programmer, but I learned it myself with just Stack Overflow and a book. This data science world, getting from a data source to a dashboard, is crazy complex. Like people can't even agree on what a model is and things like that. There is room for an application that lays out what stuff is and it just defines it. A model is this, not that, it's this. So I'm very encouraged. I think this industry needs a solution, and I'm very convinced of that. And we're going to make sure we are something that's really, really approachable. And just like Ruby on Rails performed 100 times slower than anything else at that day, that's fine. Doesn't have to be super fast. But let me build a blog in 15 minutes. Let me get from data source to dashboard in 15 minutes. That's all I ask for. Now, at least let me type things that make sense.
Agreed.
Cool. Anything else we need to discuss in this meeting? So maybe write down under 31 what we'll have by Monday. Then is our next meeting, I think. I'll be able to make that. Ben, what do you want to achieve by Monday?
That's a good question. I think I'm going to talk to Jacob. I think originally we were talking about setting up more tests for Meltano Analyze, but maybe that's shifted with these sort of new specialties or responsibilities. But yeah, I can definitely coordinate with Jacob. As of right now, I think my first priority is to get some tests up and running for Meltano itself.
Meltano itself, is that like the CLI or is that?
Sorry, yeah, I was gonna say Meltano Analyze, but we've renamed that technically to Meltano, so the Meltano web application. So the UI.
Jacob, is that still relevant considering we'll start to try to use Superset there?
Right.
There needs to be some user interface for the models.
How does that user interface for the models look?
I can show you. Oh, I've showed you, right? I showed you already. It's basically a file browser.
Oh yeah, with the buttons you can click.
It has to sync. It has to
select
compile to Mac files
Well, compiling files can happen
through the CLI.
I don't think test, since it's so under construction, I'm not against the programmer writing it, actually writing tests, but you writing tests for someone else's code doesn't make sense to me.
Well, we have to figure out what actually. So if we could remove the user interface completely and just say, we're going to, this is how we're going to add the compile step to the CLI. But I thought we were moving more towards having things in a user interface. But so if we're not doing that, either way, the programmer should do that. But do we, if we move stuff to superset, well, we have to see what that looks like. So I think for now, we'll hold off on that. And let's have you do something else, because I think it's too much in flux.
Yeah. Don't have someone else write the test. Like you write, people should write their own test.
But I think it makes sense for, I think the docs are in a really good place right now. Would you agree?
Was that addressed to me?
Yes.
No. Or yeah, go ahead.
It updated. That's a nice thing. It's I don't know. If I click installation, it says pip install Meltano, and then I should be done. This is what I see.
Yep, because technically, yeah, you have it installed Meltano, and then at that point, if you want to follow a tutorial, it's basically where I split that off.
Okay, but it doesn't say here. Now go read the tutorial.
So in the bottom right, you'll see the tutorials like next step. I guess maybe that's not obvious enough.
Okay.
But that's a fair point. I should update that text to be at least say, hey, if you want to follow the next steps, I'll make a note of that right now.
So we don't want to use Postgres anymore, but that's, you gotta wait for that to.
So I think one thing that, so we have a couple of different things we're doing. We are looking at how we can interact with Superset. And, well, I mean, that's the main thing we're doing from the front end. The modeling step is done from the front end. I guess that's the question, is what does the front end look like from Meltano side? It looks like there isn't really one that's needed unless you just count that file browser.
Well, people have an editor, right? So you should need a file browser.
People what?
If the file browser is all you do is you browse files, then we can assume people have an editor, right?
Yeah, we still need to sync the files, which is what it does. It needs to compile the files, so that could be a CLI command.
Yeah.
All right, so let me add that then. We got it.
But that's really Jacob's work, right?
Yeah.
So what I expect is, look, I'm installing Meltano and it has modeling and everything else, and then I hear C tabs and targets. Like this is, we gotta, I think that's super confusing. I think we should say a tab is a type of extractor, but we're going to refer to it as an extractor everywhere. And I don't think we should treat them the same. Basically, in the documentation, I want to see every letter of Meltano combined with like an explanation of what it is.
Yep, that makes sense.
Because like, imagine that, like at some point, there's going to be another, I'm not sure if it's the tab or the target, but at some point there's going to be another way to do something. there's an alternative to DBT or to extractors or something else where we've made our own extractors. Jonas finally has his life work completed. Then we want to be able to introduce that without changing everything else. And it will just say, okay, you can use tabs, but you can also use the Jan. We name it in your honor, Jonas. So you can have Jan stripe, YAN-stripe. That is the level at which we should see that name. But now we're taking it all the way to the high level, and I still don't know what is an extractor and what is a loader and things like that. So
Sounds good.
cool.
Ben, do you know if Claudia's graphic, is that going to be, or maybe that's already in there?
No, that will be integrated in this week.
Okay, cool.
Derek has a task, Jacob has a task, Jonas is working on the CLI. Jonas, you're going to try to make it work with SQLite. Make Carbon work with SQLite.
So for that means making a targets SQLite just for Carbon.
Well, that works with Carbon, yeah, just for, like,
Not just for, but like that at least works with Carbon.
exactly,
Yeah.
that at least works.
Not worry about extreme cases like JSON fields, etc.
Yes, less worry, more shipping. There's two, you can either design the problems or design the solutions. We're gonna get into solution design.
So I guess the question is should we stop everything we're doing on the current thing that Derek and I were working on, which is like to get Carbon graphed with the current Meltano Analyze user interface?
No,
and
just
then go to,
you keep going because we need an end-to-end demo.
right. Okay. And so then after that, we can focus on superset.
Yep. Make
Okay.
something that works. You said you were really close. Right?
Yeah, close.
Make it work. You'll see that if you have it working, it's easier for everyone else to start reasoning about it.
Yeah.
So we don't go from running after idea to running after idea. We finish something quickly and then do the next thing. So we wasn't like, GitLab thought it, GitLab really was bad with GitLab. Here's something new and you have to redo everything. No, there was a migration path and everything else. I have a really hard time imagining how people will use this because what we're basically starting to do is we're going to make a whole collection of other things easier to operate. And it's almost like we're becoming the Docker for data science. Because what Docker was like there were already, all the primitives were in the Linux kernel for containers. Docker just added a better CLI on top. But Docker didn't do anything new itself. So maybe that's the best analogy of what we're trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
We allow you, with like one command, to kind of string together a lot of other stuff.
Create a familiar lingo, a familiar terminology throughout the whole thing so that it's easier to understand.
Yep, with version control. We do for data source to dashboard what Docker did for containers.
Where are you writing this?
It's 37. I think that's a great analogy. And I think if you show people a demo that in 15 minutes, you can go from having nothing to doing the ELT thing, modeling it, having graphs, having a notebook, and orchestrating a scheduled run of everything you've just shown, I think it will be mind blown. And it's not that it's not possible, it's just that no one made it into a consistent experience. Cool. See you Monday.
Thanks so much, Sid.
Good.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Thanks.